Coach Steve Hall and Coach Scott Shank. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks for having us.
We're kind of doing a different flavor of a podcast that I did previously on the show with Travis and Tanner. We kind of got together after a class one night. But that was more, purple belt level conversation. And today we're stepping it up for some black belt level conversation. Not from me, but from the two of you. So to give people some background, can you guys explain who you are and which respective parts of the gym you kind of run here?
I'm Scott Shank. Where do I start? As far as the gym here, I'm just one of the coaches.
Just one of the coaches?
Just one of the coaches.
So, but you are of the Ascend family, is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we merged in with Asgard, 6 months ago? Mm-hmm. Something like that. I ran my own place for 3 years and decided it was time to...
That fly is not leaving you alone.
Decided it was time to move in over here.
Yeah, cool. And you're teaching mostly gi stuff.
Yes.
Around here. Only gi or?
Right. For right now, only gi. I was teaching a little bit of kickboxing for a while. Needed a little bit of a break.
Yeah, why's that?
3 years of running a school full time was taxing.
Mm-hmm.
So
I can imagine.
Yeah.
And Coach Steve, tell us about yourself a little bit.
I'm an Army vet. We've got 4 black belts on staff here. We've got 7 coaches. Coach Shank and I decided to merge a while back just because we're under the same 4th degree black belt, Jason Keaton. And it's pretty hard running your school when you're kind of the only black belt. So we felt there were strength in numbers. We were in the same 4th degree black belt. It made sense to merge the entities, save some rent. His lease was up. We made this work. We expanded into this space. We were down the road a little bit, down the walkway here. So I teach mostly no-gi here. We have Coach Tanner and Coach Gibson teach kickboxing, but we're all qualified to teach anything. We just kind of share the burden of teaching. And then once in a while I'll jump in for a gi class, and Coach Shank will jump in for a no-gi class.
Yeah, nice. I think it's cool how you guys have merged up. I was talking to Travis and Tanner about I started reading this book by Peter Thiel. Are you guys familiar with Peter Thiel at all?
No.
He's the investor that started PayPal, and his whole thing is about he calls it creating monopolies. And the idea is that like most competition, when you've got 2 places that are doing roughly the same thing, is pretty stupid. And it'd be far better to pool resources and do something bigger and better. And I really love that in jiu-jitsu, when schools can actually come together and work together, because it gets your guys more roles, more people in a bigger space.
Yeah.
And it's just and a wider variety of instruction, which to me is like that's the end all be all, is like as many people as you can get sort of inputting on that, the better. So I like what you guys have done here. It's cool that you've pulled everybody together. Was that the vision from the beginning, was to like kind of be the place to pull all
We've
this
discussed
together?
it over the years many times. Just wasn't the right time.
Mm-hmm.
We both have very similar training styles. Our guys have always worked well together. We've always had open mats with each other.
Right.
So time finally came.
Nice.
Scott and I were both trained under another gym here, and when we were promoted, we decided to start our own business. We did that at different times. But Coach Shank and I have been training together for 12 years, about 12 years, I guess.
Nice. And was most of that training here in Lafayette or in Indiana?
Yeah,
or
mostly here.
Most of mine was here. I was also down in Texas for a year. So, I kind of been back and forth a little bit.
Yeah.
I was in South Dakota before I came here. I started in 2007 in jiu-jitsu, but didn't really start training heavy till I got here in 2010.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So, and I've been in combatives, Army combatives all my life, and judo, but I didn't really take jiu-jitsu seriously until about 2010 when I moved here from South Dakota.
Mm-hmm. So I know you want to talk a little bit about the connection kind of for jiu-jitsu and vets and some of the things kind of that you're trying to do with that. I wonder if you could tell me some, maybe just about your experience with it, that connection.
You wanna? Is this me?
This is you.
That's all
Okay.
you, from what
All
I
you.
understand.
All right, so so we've got I think 5 of the 7 coaches we have are Army vets, and all of us have a varying degree of disability. Had traumatic brain injury and field artillery, and all the coaches have some degree of PTSD, and so in the military, soldiers often they develop a close set of friends when they're in the military, and there are a lot of them that have minor injuries, physical injuries. A lot of them have emotional injuries, PTSD of varying levels. The thing is, when they get out of the military and they go home, their support system is usually not in the same town. You may have a friend that lives across the country. So that support group vets had during their service time is not there. And so a lot of guys have trouble assimilating themselves back into civilian life. And jiu-jitsu, grappling, combat sports is one of those things that gives vets a sense of community and purpose. And we have, I don't know, 8 or 10 military veterans here, a lot of law enforcement. So jiu-jitsu, grappling, kickboxing, boxing, combat sports tends to, law enforcement, military people tend to gravitate towards that. And that's been very effective in helping people. And we are part of We Defy affiliation. So We Defy is a program that takes vets that are 80% combat disabled, and if they're still a white belt, it allows them to train in an approved affiliate facility through Blue Belt, and We Defy will pay their monthly membership, give them gear. So we have 2 We Defy athletes here that are also law enforcement. We also work a lot with police officers. We're a member affiliate of Adopt a Cop. So what we do is we train law enforcement free of charge up through Blue Belt. Adopt a Cop does that, but they often run low on funding. So what we've been doing in lieu of funding, we still allow the officers to train for free. And I extended that to their families, because in this town, a lot of officers take their cars home. So that can present a deterrent to crime in that neighborhood, but police officers then become a target. So if somebody has a vendetta against a cop and they see a cop parked on a street, they know exactly when that cop's there. If that police car is not there, they know they're at work and their family's home. So we've started letting the kids and the wives of the law enforcement train free as well, because they're vulnerable to some degree, especially since officers are taking cars home more now. So we try to, we give student discounts, we give vet discounts, we have first responder discounts. We try to pay it forward, and there are a lot of full paying members, and we have a lot of them that veterans through We Defy. If the veterans don't qualify for the 80% combat disability, we still give them a price break. We also, if there's people that come in and are economically disadvantaged or their kid has special needs, we'll work with them on tuition. We don't have contracts, it's just month to month, and we're here to make people better, not to make a lot of money.
Yeah. The point is, you have very little excuses out there, to not come do this, not come be a part of this.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting what you're saying. At least on the vet side of things, the community, the support system. I mean, you guys, I'm sure, have both experienced this, but through jiu-jitsu, through martial arts, it's a different thing connecting with people. It's far closer relationships, and I think I do a lot of podcasts about jiu-jitsu, so I'm always trying to kind of work out exactly why that is. There's a lot to be said for the idea that when you come here, there's trust. We're putting ourselves into other people's hands, so we're sort of coming in here and doing a lot of trust exercises, if
Right.
you will. And if you just keep doing that with people, eventually you will really develop good relationships. But it's it does become such a community. I mean, even the other night, you guys were watching the UFC fights, and I think last year people must have been busy when the fights were on when I was in town, because I came out and there were only a couple people there, and that's kind of what I expected this time. But this time I came in, I mean, there were 30 people sitting around eating pizza and hanging out. Everybody had their kids in. The kids had already passed out a long time ago. We're just sleeping on the mats. It was a really sweet kind of environment. It was cool to see everybody bring in, their girlfriends and stuff. It's a tight-knit group you guys have got here. it's a really good thing. And I don't think you find it elsewhere. And I think in particular men don't find it elsewhere. You know, I don't know of anything that creates those connections like martial arts does.
With very few exceptions, you can and you've seen this. You travel a country, and you can walk into almost any jiu-jitsu academy, and they're usually pretty chill. They welcome you with open arms. People don't try to hurt each other. I mean, there are exceptions, you know, but generally, the jiu-jitsu community, the grappling community, is very family-oriented. I mean, you've had good experiences most places you've gone, and very few gyms you go into and you get a bad feeling.
Yeah.
You know, and Rogan said it once. I mean, we roll pretty hard, and we bump hands, and then we tap and we say, "Yeah, you killed me," and we bump hands and we go again. You know, so we do put our trust in our training partner, not to hurt us, because we all have day jobs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked a little about that too when I was talking to Tanner and Travis. Like, it's a big deal to get injured here. You know, most of us don't. I don't think other people really put themselves in the position to be potentially injured on a regular basis, and we all do. But we really work hard not to become injured here.
Right.
It really can impede your life to get a bone broken or something. You know. Like for Andrea and I, that's one thing I always think about. It. People harass me about competing and like, when are you going to compete? All these things, and to me, my biggest holdup with that is knowing that people go a little different in a competition setting, and they should. That's good, but if I break something, it's going to affect me being able to move the RV, earn money, do a lot of things for a hot minute, and I can't always afford to do that. But luckily, people really do, you know, generally look out for you. And there's a lot of personal responsibility with that too. You're kind of in charge of making sure you don't get hurt here just as much as anybody else. And sometimes people forget that. They think it's the other person's job, but it's your job too, you know.
I tell our students that, you know, live to fight another day. You know, you want to be in this for the long haul, and you have to train smart, not necessarily hard all the time. And there's certain people you roll with, and there's certain people you don't. You pace yourself. If you're feeling crappy that day or that week, sit out. I mean, you know, if you want to be in this, it's a lifelong thing for most of us, you know. And so, yeah.
Not getting any younger.
Yeah. Well, it's a lifelong thing for you guys, but I feel like it's also hard to tell for anybody that comes in the gym if they'll stick with it or not.
Yeah.
You know, and I think in my experience, well, in my limited experience, let me say, I do see people who, even if they've got a lot of drive for it at the start, can sometimes they just disappear. You just don't see them again, and I never really understand what that is. That's not something that's not me. So when other people do it, I have a hard time understanding.
One of the reasons I think a lot of people quit a blue belt. So blue belt's 2, 3, 4 years, depending on how often you train. But blue belt, if you acquire your blue belt, I mean, you can handle probably most people on the street. So by that time, the guy or the person's been training a few years, but they usually start when they're younger. By the time they have blue belts, in 2 or 3 years, they usually have a kid by then. Then maybe they've gotten married, they've gotten a new job, you know, and life gets in the way. And so people say, you know, I'm going to take some time off. I got my blue belt. I feel pretty confident. I'm going to take some time off, you know, do some other things I need to do. And I think life just gets in the way of a lot of people, and they quit a blue belt. Usually if a guy makes purple person, they're going to go on to black belt. But up to blue belt, and we've seen a lot of great blue belts, and they just stop coming in. And, you know, they still like it. I think they just, and I, you know, in academia, I always told my students, if you're going to quit and you tell yourself you're going to get back into it, you make that commitment to come back to it. Because if you don't, one day you wake up and you're 40, and you know, if it was a college degree or a black belt, whatever it is, you regret then not going back and finishing it. So if something you really like to do, make that commitment to, you know, I'm going to take 6 months off, but I'm going to get back into it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know, life gets in the way.
And that's not always easy to do.
Yeah, very hard.
Take 6 months off, you've lost all your cardio, getting
then
rusty on your movements.
We've a number of guys, I mean, we've been training together 12 years, and there are guys that were white belts with us, and they're still white belts. They stopped training. Mm-hmm. But they get discouraged now because they come in and everybody's past them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, you know, your motivation to continue training is not as good because, man, I've been out of this for years. I've lost my cardio and my techniques. Everybody else I started training with is now, upper belt.
Yeah. I mean, arguably the hardest part is starting.
Yeah.
So if you put yourself through starting every few years, that's a brutal way to do it instead of just keep showing up,
Yeah.
Even on a limited basis. I've talked to plenty of people. The guy that shows up once a week or once every 2 weeks, he's still progressing. It's just slow, but it's not the same as dropping all the way out and having to come back to this, because there is nothing like it. Nothing in fitness, in the cardio. You won't find another thing that's even close. But I had a good experience. So we're recording this right after the 4th. It should come out next week, I think. So pretty close. And so I was at the 4th of July, and I've got a rowdy cousin who I had to wrestle because I just wanted to see where am I at with someone who doesn't know something. He didn't wrestle in high school or anything like that, but he's the kind of kid who had wrestled around a little bit, just wrestled with his friends and stuff. And I hadn't done that as a kid. I was never, when I came into jiu-jitsu, it was like the first time I had done anything wrestling, grappling at all. And so, we sat down on the grass and I started working on things a little bit. And what was interesting for me was I felt like I could handle him just fine, but he's a strong kid and it wasn't as fast as I would have liked. You know what I mean? So sometimes you think like, okay, I've got my blue belt. And like you said, you should be able to handle anybody in the street, maybe, but I wish it was faster. I wish it was like, no question, he can go nowhere, instead of I had to work on him for a little bit to get him to the right spot where I wanted him to be. And that was fine, but I think it's almost a little encouraging. And I think some guys need that to roll with a day one person who's maybe just an athletic person. Mm-hmm. And it reminds you, like, you think this should be easy, but it's just not quite yet. And where I know that people like Tanner or like Travis, who are at that purple belt level, they can pick apart a new person without hardly moving. So you want to keep progressing in this, and it's a real interesting challenge. There's just nothing like that.
No.
We've ignored that. We've dropped that. It's fallen out of society. Maybe it's coming back. So the connection in the military. You said you had done. Army combatives, is that what you were talking about? Yeah. I'm not familiar with what that is. Can you tell me about that?
Army combatives there was old school Army combatives before modern Army combatives came into being. Marines got their own combatives program, but combatives program is a basic few-week course that we teach officers or enlisted people on just basic guard, really minimal coverage of jiu-jitsu techniques and stand-up. And so a white belt with 6 months of training here is going to be probably better than most people that have taken combatives classes, unless you continue in that combatives. So modern Army combatives started in the early mid-90s, where Matt Larson incorporated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu into the combatives program. Before the 90s, BJJ wasn't around much. I mean, it really came to the forefront in the 90s. So the old school Army combatives didn't incorporate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, incorporated Judo, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, Fairbairn, Sykes, knife fighting, that kind of stuff. So I was trained under old school combatives and then trained under modern Army combatives. But as a whole, the combatives black belt will not be a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They will be more like maybe a blue belt.
Okay. Yeah.
You just can't get this level of training in a few weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a couple of years just to get the basics down as a white belt usually.
Yeah. The only other people I've met who travel as much as I do on the road is people who are in some branch of the armed forces, and what I always think is cool about them is they have a similar journey to me. They talk about all the different places they've been able to train because of that, and I think it's cool. It's encouraging to see active duty guys really coming into jiu-jitsu too, and that growing there. And I don't know anything about what it's like in that world, but I know I've met a lot of them, and for anybody who travels on a regular basis, like there's just nothing better than that. All of a sudden I can go to any town and put a flag in the ground and be like, oh, I got some friends here, I got a little home here. Great. I got to imagine that's good for your active duty guys and your vets to it's your ready-made family, man. You just show up and participate and get that mutual respect, and it's a good environment. I think that so have either of you guys come across the Terminal list yet on Amazon Prime? Heard about this? No.
No.
Okay, so this is Jack Carr, who's a former Navy SEAL, wrote all these books about his action heroes. Like is James Reese. He's kind of the new Jack Ryan, I guess. He's been on Rogan a few times talking about it. Jack Carr has, and they finally just released the Amazon Prime series of his first book. It's got Chris Pratt in it, and Andrew and I just finished it today. I'm kind of obsessed with it. It's pretty phenomenal, and one of my favorite things is that because they had a former Navy SEAL at the head of this project, you know, the violence, the work they're doing with the guns, it's all really accurate, and there's a good amount of jiu-jitsu in there too. He throws someone in an armbar at one point, and I'm watching this, and because I participate in this, I'm like, yeah, all of that's completely reasonable, and he does it the way you ought to do it. It's cool to see jiu-jitsu getting into more popular forms of media like that. And I think like really the only other example I could think of is like maybe John Wick, where you get good violence and an occasional jiu-jitsu moment, you know, but I think once you start grappling, I don't know about you guys, but when I watch a show or a movie and I see people do different, you know, martial arts moments, I'm like, that would never work.
Yeah.
Made me such a
Yeah.
skeptic. I don't think Andrea likes watching action movies with me anymore because we just watch it and I'm like, nah, he did that all wrong, you know. It's a problem.
Yeah.
Is that just me? You guys do
No.
this?
They had that movie Nicolas Cage Jiu-Jitsu, and I never saw one piece of jiu-jitsu in the movie. I didn't watch the whole thing, but it was terrible.
Really?
But it's like they call it jiu-jitsu, but I didn't see much in there that resembled jiu-jitsu.
That's the name of the movie?
Yeah.
I've never seen that movie. Now I have to go
It's
watch it.
really bad. But a lot of the movies are, you know, like that. But then surprising a number like Ashton Kutcher, Jason Statham, a lot of those guys train in jiu-jitsu. You just mentioned somebody.
Yeah. Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves is, I think he's a purple belt now or something.
Tom Hardy trains
Tom
too,
Hardy.
and I saw his movie Warrior. That's on
Yep,
Netflix
yep.
about
That was pretty good.
in the MMA. Yeah, I mean another one where you actually get to see some real jiu-jitsu. I appreciate when people get that right because like they're in another life. I want to move to Hollywood and like be a part of consulting on like would this ever work? No, that wouldn't. And you don't have to have. I think a blue belt could handle it because some of the things they suggest, you know, you just hit this guy right here and he'll be knocked out for 40 minutes. It's no problem, you know.
You watch McDojo Life?
Yeah, of course.
That's great.
Some of those ones are really brutal. He put one out today that was a coach slapping his student after I assume after she like lost a karate match or something, and it's like a young female student and this coach just smacks her in the face. It's really hard to watch some of these things. He wields kind of a lot of power, being able to call those guys out. You don't want to be on the receiving end of a McDojo Life moment, you know.
We laugh at these people, but they train and take money from people, convincing people that this is legit self-defense stuff, and that the only thing it's going to do is drain your pocketbook and get you hurt or killed.
Yeah.
That Dale Brown, Detroit,
Yeah.
that guy, the stuff he shows, gun disarms, I mean, they're going to get you killed.
Right.
He shows you how to disarm a person with a karambit. You're not going to disarm anybody with a karambit. They're just going to cut you in half. So there's a lot of that. That's the bad part about a lot of the self-defense stuff is it's just not going to work.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in here, there's an obvious method to know if something's going to work or not, which is at the end of every roll, you're either going to go to sleep or the other person's going to break something on you. You know, no matter what, that's how we end everything. And you don't see that in other forms of martial arts.
Every one of our law enforcement guys have already had a moment or more, an incident where their training here kept them from getting seriously injured.
Yeah.
Mac was here tonight. They just had a call over the weekend. A guy was beating his wife, and they had to take this guy down. And so Mac figures he's had 6 incidents where it saved his life, his training in here. So it works.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'd love to hear that. You know.
Yeah.
That's what we want. We talked to Tanner and Travis and I talked about how for most, the big rule in self-defense is if you can walk away, you should. But in law enforcement, you can't walk away. You are the one to, you're the last line, you know. The buck stops at you, and you have to deal with this person who's doing that thing. That's not a responsibility I would want, certainly. My uncle's been in law enforcement his whole career, and I know he's had to deal with some things, and, you know, I can't imagine, frankly.
We also teach proportional response in self-defense, because if you're in a bar and some guy calls your girlfriend a bad name, you can't kill him, you know. I mean, so even police officers have to be very careful with the amount of, so this allows them to subdue a suspect without undue harm to them or the suspect. Because even using the taser now can cause health problems. They're not effective. We had one of the jail deputies got cornered in the jail by 5 inmates, and the taser was ineffective, and they can't have firearms in there. So luckily he had help came. But some of these jail deputies in these counties have 1 or 2 jail deputies for 50 to 80 inmates.
Wow.
And the deputies in the county are clear across the county on a call. So you're it sometimes. So, and we try to teach proportional response, body awareness, be aware of your surroundings, situational awareness. I mean, we teach people to be better people, not better fighters necessarily. And if you're a trained fighter, you can usually walk away from most fights.
And you should.
You should.
And the one thing you learn in jiu-jitsu that I've learned traveling around is when you walk in, there's going to be some tiny nerdy guy with the weirdest, you know, rash guard on, the dorkiest thing. He's going to have some anime something on it, and that dude is going to rip your arms off.
Yep.
And you're like, he's no threat. And that's the thing out there, you know. I think even people don't even realize what like high school wrestling can do for you.
Oh.
You know, those guys know more than me when it comes to standing up. And that's how every encounter is going to start. Those guys know a lot. So people underestimate what the body can do and what the body can take, and how just a little bit of training can change them too. Doesn't take a whole lot, you know. I imagine that's got to be frustrating for you guys as instructors when you see someone who starts to make progress, and like we talked about, you know, if they get to that blue belt level or even wherever they choose to quit, that's got to be hard.
Very frustrating. See a lot of people with a lot of potential and just quit. Very frustrating. Or kids. You know, I teach the kids class in here, and there'll be kids that have amazing potential, and, you know, maybe they had family issues or, you know, job issues, who knows, mom and dad. But the kids disappear, and it is a little frustrating at times, you know. Being able to see that person that was doing so well just gone.
Yeah. How do you stop that from happening?
I wish I knew. If I knew, the kids class would be overflowing.
There's no magic bullet for it, but
I found with the kids we found this in my Monticello gym, that the kids that get to be 12 or 13 and they have real promise in jiu-jitsu, but their friends wanted to do team sports, basketball, football, baseball.
Mm-hmm.
We lose a lot of those kids when they hit that age. I had 3 in Monticello who were amazing athletes, but they wanted to play football because their friends do that.
Right.
And I used to take it real personally when somebody I trained for a couple of years just stopped coming in, got their blue belt and left. But you have to, as a coach, that's part of the attrition of the sport. I mean, you can't. We try to touch base with somebody if they haven't been in a while. We use Implanter to try to track attendance. So we'll try to monitor somebody if they haven't been in a while. Hey, how you doing? You haven't been in a while, and try to retain people. But, you know, it's a tough sport. It's hard on the body, and you got to be dedicated to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not for everybody. The attrition rate is very high up through blue belt, and then it levels off. You know.
Yeah. Well, I guess not everybody makes it to their black belt, and if everybody did, I guess the system would be somewhat broken anyway. You know, that's an achievement. That's a moment. Did you guys get your black belts around the same time?
No, it was a year apart, year and a half.
I got mine a year sooner. Although he's been in the rank long. I mean, been doing it longer than me. Just the way it happens.
It's the way it works.
It just happens that way.
I started in 2007 also, but I hit it hard from 2007 on.
So what got both of you started in doing this in the first place? I mean, this is a crazy thing to do.
So I've always wanted to do some form of grappling. My school didn't offer any grappling when I was a kid. About 94, I graduated high school in 93. I guess that shows how old I am. And then in 94, I found a school that taught Kung Fu. Took that for a couple years, moved out of the area, got into Aikido Jiu-Jitsu, got into karate, got my black belt in karate. But the entire time I was looking for grappling. After years of trying various martial arts, I'd say the one that I would say seemed the most realistic as far as self-defense was Filipino Kali, which was the stick fighting, which simulates swords, knives. That was combat tested. But everything else, something was just missing. It's hard to go all out in striking type martial arts. I mean, you can get all padded up and everything, but if you're going all out, someone's likely going to get hurt. With jiu-jitsu, that's not quite the case. But I went into my first jiu-jitsu class as a black belt in karate, and I'd done a little bit of grappling. I learned a triangle. I learned an arm bar. Went into this class, and everybody in there was a white belt, except for the instructor. But I didn't realize everybody in there was also a wrestler. So I got my butt handed to me as a black belt, which was kind of humbling. And so I decided to come back. So I'd always been looking for that grappling, for something that seems, not just seems, something that will work. Doing forms, katas, stuff like that in karate. It's good for the traditional martial artist. It just wasn't good for me.
What is I don't know a lot about karate and different things like that. I've never really understood the point of the kata. That's maybe to build muscle memory so that the next thing happens without you thinking about it, or what's the idea? Or just perfect technique?
It was their way to hide various martial art moves. So the katas there'd be secret techniques in the katas because I don't know much about the history. They weren't allowed to train openly. They had to hide things. Just like where, some of the weapons came from, the kama and the nunchucks. Those were things used for beating down rice and, farm implements. So they had to use them and figure out how to use them as a weapon.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. People, ordinary people having to hide their ability to use violence.
Right. And, from the outside looking in, it looks like a fancy dance of some kind, but there were techniques hidden in that.
Yeah.
Supposedly maybe blocks or strikes that were incorporated in that kata.
There were grappling, and there's all kinds of stuff in it. But very, very few schools will actually take the katas and break them down and show you what various things are.
So you're just following steps.
Right.
At the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah. I have a coach in Kansas City Jeremy Horton from 10th Planet KC. I keep bringing this up on podcasts because it's really stuck with me. He said that that fighters are truth seekers, and it reminds me of what you were saying there, like the idea that you want to come into this environment and want to know what actually works, what is real, and you want to test what's real, and you're coming in here, and that's a form of science. It's not art. That we can actually test this on a real proving ground and really find out what works and what doesn't work. And it's why things like MMA have been so great, because that's the ultimate testing ground. Only a few things have really stuck, which is, basic striking and leg striking and grappling, and beyond that, not a lot of things make it in there. I think that's one of the funnier things that you do see, like on McDojo Life, is when you get practitioners of some more theoretical martial arts, I guess, going against an MMA fighter occasionally.
Right.
And those are some
Bad
of the
idea.
best videos
Bad
they
idea.
have.
One of the criticisms is that most of these martial arts, you don't train against a resisting opponent. I
Yeah.
mean, you just very passive. Aikido is, against a drunk guy in a bar, it might work, but we practice fully resisting. And my son's now an adult blue belt, but he's autistic, and he started out in karate with one of our friends at dojos here, and just wasn't for him.
Mm-hmm.
And kids that get a black belt when they're 12 or 13 in karate or taekwondo, it's good for kids, I think, but sooner or later I think you have to tell the person and the parent, look, TKD has been good for the kid up to this point, but he's going to get his butt kicked if he tries this in a fight.
Right.
In most cases.
Right. You might be
There are
given bad
exceptions.
ideas.
And in UFC, there are some guys that Lyoto Machida, who's a good karate guy, Michael Venom Page, I think taekwondo. So there are a lot of these guys that have skills in other martial arts, but they're also very skilled in stand-up and ground fighting too. And
Right.
So
Yeah, and I mean, no disrespect to anything anybody wants
Yeah,
to do. If
absolutely.
you like
Right.
it, that's great. And I'm sure there's a lot that you take away from becoming very good at taekwondo and knowing how to kick, but you got to be well-rounded. You got to be able to handle it all.
Everybody's got a foundation somewhere.
Yeah.
So
old school karate used to be real legit, but it's gotten watered down over the years, and now
people can handle getting
Yeah.
abused like they did back then.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think a lot about the self defense aspect of things too, and particularly women's self defense, and it's one of those things where jiu-jitsu is becoming bigger and bigger with women, and it's actually Andrea right now is working on a big documentary project about women who do jiu-jitsu in the U.S., and it's going to be a huge project she's taken on. But I think most women's experience with martial arts is like at some point a team of something, like a sports team went and did a self-defense seminar, a 1 hour whatever, and it isn't the same, and you don't see a lot of unless you work on this for a while, you don't get to have a fully resisting opponent. Like you said, people are stronger than you think.
absolutely.
you
They
try
don't
to-
even have to have big arms, big
No.
legs, and they can be extremely strong.
Yeah, it's the craziest thing about this. It's why you can't replicate the exercise of this doing anything
Right.
else, because humans are
We've
strong.
I've worked with triathletes, put triathletes in for a 15-minute round and they're just done for.
Yeah.
It's just totally different type of cardio.
Yeah. We were trying to find something comparable, and we couldn't find a good example.
Wrestling, that'd be about it.
That's it. You got to be grappling or nothing. Nothing
Yeah.
feels like this. But I have found that bringing in some cross training really does help. Like as my steady state cardio and running and things like that come along, it helps me in here. But it's still not the same.
Yeah.
You get people who can run just miles on miles, no problem. This is going to wind you. It's going to be
Oh, yeah.
intense. Yeah.
you mentioned the women, and so I
Yeah.
had a lady email me about a week ago. She's a counselor for girls who are getting ready to go to college,
Mhm.
and given the current state of our world, the girls are really apprehensive about moving away from home, going to a new college,
Yeah.
away from, and so we're going to offer free self-defense training for these girls, especially they're just 18, right? They're high school seniors, and sometimes they're moving across country and colleges aren't always the safest place that they used to be. So these young women, it's going to instill more confidence in them, self-defense aspect before they head off to college. And I had never really thought about that. And she emailed me. She had this group of girls, and we offered to train them, put some special classes together, learn self-defense seminars. So
Even if there's a few things they can walk away with, it can.
most of our women that have come in have had a come to Jesus moment, where they had something almost happen to them or happened to them, and they realized they needed to come in and don't know how to take care of themselves.
Yeah, it is one of those ounce of prevention things, you know. Just a little bit of self-awareness can really keep you from having an experience that you have to think about for the rest of your life, you know, that messes with you.
If you look at people in a store or something, they have no awareness of their surroundings or anything. And that's the first thing. Situational awareness will keep you out of most skirmishes. I mean,
Right.
if that alley's dark, if you get bad vibes, don't go down there. If that
Right.
bar is rowdy and there's a bunch of people drunk, don't go in there.
Mhm.
They go, how do you not get in fights? I don't go in places where people fight a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Don't go down that dark alley, or if your gut's telling you, but people ignore those signals. And situational awareness is the most important thing for self-defense.
Yeah. I think things get really confusing when people talk about the victim blaming side of things. I understand where the argument against blaming the victim comes in. I do. At the same time, it is no one else's job but you to make sure that you're good in life, you know, that you take care of yourself. That's life. That is what it is. It's a jungle, and to pretend like it's anything else is the mistake. So people who are not willing to prepare themselves even a little bit, you're going to regret that, you know.
Yeah. Going into life with a blindfold on.
Yeah. I think about it all the time. There's such little things, and I bring up this book on just about every episode, so my listeners have got to be tired of hearing about it. Tim Larkin wrote a book called When Violence is the Answer. This book to me is like the Bible of self-defense, because his perspective is like none I've ever heard before, in so many ways. And one of the things he talks about constantly is that a criminal's looking for low-hanging fruit. They're not looking for something difficult.
No.
And there's a lot of things you can do to look more difficult than the next person, you know? Simply not being on your phone as you walk into a building. That's a huge thing, because most people are in that phone while they're walking, no awareness of what's going on around them. All it is like wait until you get into the grocery store to send a text. That's it, you know? Or not wearing big headphones, not wearing obvious headphones so that people know like that person can't hear anything going on around them. There's just a lot of small things that you can do for yourself, but I think that the main thing is like I don't know. I take everything in life seriously because I get one shot at it, and I'm gonna. So if I find something that matters or that can make a difference for me, I'm gonna do that thing. And I think so many people just are floating through, not recognizing how much power they really have in their life. You know, that your intention matters. So if you are willing to learn just a little bit, you don't have to get into sport jiu-jitsu. You don't. You can learn just a little bit and be more self-aware, and that can massively affect your life. Because your criminal's not looking for a challenge.
No.
But there was an incident that happened recently I heard about. I don't know enough about this, so let me armchair expert this one for you. There was a confrontation in a subway. I want to say it was in Georgia. Did you hear about this? A guy...
Haven't heard about it.
He got into an argument about they'd put too much mayo on his sandwich. Okay?
Yes, I did
Pulls
hear
out a
about
gun
that.
and shoots 2 store employees at a Subway over the mayo on his sandwich. And this is me being uninformed. I'm laying that out. I'm not a journalist, so nobody can be mad at me for this. But my first reaction on reading that story was, number one, that guy's in the wrong. Obviously, that's crazy. That's nuts. But one of the things that this book that I mentioned talks about is imagine that everyone around you is about 6 seconds away from a mass shooting. Just treat everybody as if any minute now they could just snap and it's go time, and they're going to pull that gun out.
In
and
today's
go.
world, that makes sense.
Right. So my initial thought when I heard that story was, I wonder how those store employees reacted when he started getting angry about the mayonnaise. Because I guarantee, I expect that the reaction was not de-escalating. I would imagine you've got bored store employees who feel like righteous, whatever, they want to have a fight about it, this guy's being annoying, and they come right back at him and escalate that situation. That'd be my guess as to how that went down, because I don't think it happens with someone who's de-escalating a conflict. I don't know, and I could be completely wrong, but I bet I could point you to
agree
another
with you.
example.
I wouldn't have said a damn thing about the mayonnaise to begin with.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. And then the way you say it, is
Yeah.
important.
You
If
work
you're
at
a
a
dick
Subway,
and
it's
you're yelling
not.
at somebody,
Yeah.
all bets are off. man.
Yeah. It's not even your fault if you have to make the guy another sandwich.
Yeah.
You just go, sorry about that. You toss that one. Let's get you a new one, bud. That's it. That's the whole interaction,
Yeah.
I hope to learn a little more about that story so I can either be confirmed or be completely shut down and I'm totally wrong and everybody was being really nice and this guy is just nuts and just decided to shoot everybody.
There are those
I doubt it.
cases. I mean, sometimes, like the shooting in where was it, Chicago? Over the
Yeah,
weekend.
it was Highland Park over the weekend, right? And
I mean, those victims really couldn't do anything.
Yeah,
They didn't know it was
exactly.
coming.
yeah, no one's victim blaming on that one.
Yeah.
The question is, in the situations where you can make a difference, what do you do?
Yeah.
I doubt it was worth it to die over arguing with this guy about the mayo on a sandwich. You seem like you doubt my.
No,
reason
no,
there.
I completely agree.
You
It's
think so?
just crazy.
It's nuts. It's nuts.
Just to argue for the sake of argument.
Some people are looking for a fight. This guy's walking around looking for the first person to piss him off that day.
Yeah,
We see that a lot. And you go to a bar and that's half the people there. You give someone 2 beers, and I don't know, I've met a lot of people that you give them 2 beers and they're angry all of a sudden.
yeah.
Changes them, It's so stupid. Well, that's my theoretical unraveling of that story. But then you think about all the law enforcement officers that have to go out there, and the first job is to de-escalate. And I think that only happens if they feel confident in themselves and
Yeah.
come and train something like this, so they can handle that situation. So I think it's great that you guys are doing that.
If you watch a lot of the police videos of trying to contain a suspect, it's just laughable
Yeah,
how bad those officers are. They'll have 5 cops on a guy and he gets up and gets away. It's
Right.
like, that shouldn't happen.
yeah.
And
That doesn't
anymore,
happen.
they almost have to get authority to use a taser because people can have heart problems. So even flashbangs are now really hard to use, and even tasers now. And Mac, one of the deputies who trains with us, they had a parole violator, and the guy went for his gun 3 times, and it was on.
Yeah.
And they had his partner trains at another gym here, and they both got beat up pretty bad. But this guy went for his gun 3 times, and he would have been dead if he hadn't ended training in here. So.
Wow.
He tried to de-escalate that, but it went from 0 to 100 like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best thing you can do is just try. Doesn't always work. Well, you guys beat me up pretty good today. We just finished an open mat. If people are watching, you can't tell. I'm covered in sweat. It was a solid open mat, and it's like the hottest day we've had here for whatever reason. It's so wet outside. And, I'm soaked. My brain's running out of thoughts. You guys have anything else you'd like to add? I appreciated chatting with both of you.
He's a man of few words.
I've noticed
I speak a little more, but
Yeah.
get him drunk.
that. No, I didn't bring beers to this one.
Yeah, well, I
should've
got
done that.
beers from the fights the other night. We should have popped open some beers.
That's it, boys.
Well, we really appreciate you being here. Come back anytime and train your family. And anybody listening that wants to, in the area, wants to come in and train, no matter what your financial status is, or old, young, beginner, expert, come in.
Yep.
We're just a big family.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate being able to train with you guys, and thanks for having us out once again.
Absolutely.
Folks, Asgard Combat Sports, this is the place to train. If you're in Lafayette area, come out and see these guys, or if you're traveling through, catch an open mat with them. They will challenge you. Thanks to both of you guys for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler.
I think that's it. People, keep an eye out. Andrea and I have both been doing a lot of jiu-jitsu photos and new things, and she's exploring that doc. So if anybody wants to go follow, American Jiu-Jitera is the account. She's got that rolling now. That's going to be such an exciting project. So stay tuned for that. As always, listeners, we will see you on the next episode.